Hello, my name is David Garahy and I come from World Animal Protection. And I would like to welcome you all today and thank you for your attendance at this webinar. At this webinar, we will officially hand over to Petition, addressing G20 leaders, asking them to end the wildlife trade. The outbreak of the COVID pandemic is shining a harsh spotlight on how people treat wild animals and cruelly exploit them for commercial. This exploitation comes at a considerable cost, not just to wild animals, but also to the health of people on our planet. Millions of wild animals are today being bred in cruel commercial captivity and poached from the wild to be consumed for meat and other purposes. There are farms and markets that end up being incubators for pandemics such as COVID. We've commodified wild animals and created a cruel multi-billion-dollar business that harms and exploits them on an industrial scale. Wild animals belong in the wild. When left there and people keeping a safe distance from them, this protects them and protects the world and makes it healthier and safer. This is shown in a video that World Animal Protection has produced to support this, which I will show now. I would like to introduce Anja Hazehamp, and I'm honored to welcome her to this webinar. Anja is a member of the European Parliament and is a member of the Party for Animals and a representative of the European United Left Nordic Green Party. She was a member of the House of Representatives of the Netherlands since 2012, She's been a member of the European Parliament since 2014, and she's the chair of the Animal Welfare and has been a great supporter for animal welfare NGOs. Indeed, she previously worked for the Dutch Society for the Protection of Animals, as well as AA. So I would like to give the floor to Anja.
Well, thank you very much, David. First of all, I would like to congratulate World Animal Protection on reaching 1 million signatures for a worldwide ban on the trade in wild animals. It is a great success. We have known for years that the trade in animals is shady and dangerous business that must stop. This year we have seen what the devastating consequences are if we fail to do so. Every year, millions of endangered species are legally and illegally transported all over the world. They end up in dubious medicines, in exotic meals, or on walls in living rooms. They end up in zoos and in our houses as pets. The trade of these animals developed into a ruthless, really ruthless form of criminality. And the lack of compliance with international agreements to prevent this is very, very saddening. The ongoing trade in wildlife is dangerous for us, and it is dangerous for our planet. And it causes immense stress and sorrow for the animals. It is clear that we urgently need to stop importing and trading animals caught from the wild. The trade in tigers, for instance, is big and totally irresponsible business in the EU, and one that is hard to control. When are we going to stop transporting live tigers, their skins, bodies, and trophies across our borders? And when will we stop importing kangaroo meat to Europe or kangaroo leather? When will we stop whaling? When will we stop the trade in ivory or the exhibitions with live animals, wild animals? Isn't it time to close Dolphinaria, to close our circuses? We cannot point our finger to other continents if here in Europe the trade in wild animals is still facilitated. I see many opportunities for the EU to take her responsibility. For instance, to contribute to the protection of wild animals in countries of origin, support local authorities in combating illegal wild capture of animals, encourage member states to take more measures, support stricter measures in the revision of the EU Action Plan for against wildlife trafficking, and to help at the borders to tackle the smuggling routes that are used to transport animals. But in the end, it is a worldwide problem, and it needs a worldwide and global solution. When we need to look at the COVID crisis, as you already mentioned, David. The whole world is trying to solve the COVID crisis at this moment, a crisis that actually started by the way we treat our animals. And when solving a problem, we should never forget to look at the actual cause of it, or else it will happen again. And unfortunately, zoonotic outbreaks like COVID-19 probably will happen again. COVID-19 is not the first zoonotic disease that we have had, and it will probably not be the last. Global leaders are meeting at the G20 Leaders Summit this weekend, and the EU will be represented as one of the current 20 members. And therefore, Europe must make a difference and take a clear stand against wildlife trafficking. Now, it is the time to address this problem. Yes, while we are in the middle of a crisis. Now, we must drastically change the way we treat animals and ban this trade once and for all, before it is too late, before it is everybody has turned back to business as usual, most likely trying to solve another crisis that we could and should have prevented all along. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anja, for your support and for giving us these words about the petition. We for sure think that the G20 summit this weekend is a crucial moment for the world to stand up and say that there must be an end to the cruel wildlife trade. So I would like to officially hand over the petition, which 1 million people have signed, calling on the G20 to ban the trade in wild animals and wild animal products. Governments, we believe, should implement laws that would outlaw the inter-country trade in wildlife and wild animal products for commercial purposes. And governments should also ensure that resources and expertise are in place for the management of confiscated wild animal products. It's also time to end cruel wildlife markets and farms. We hope that at this weekend's G20 Leader Summit, EU countries will especially stand up and push for progress on getting towards this ban. So, we have some questions from viewers today about how and where this ban can be implemented, and I'd like to tackle a couple of them. The first is saying, I thought that only the illegal wildlife trade pose a real threat to animals and humans. Why is the legal trade important? I think this is something that we have come in World Animal Protection to understand, that actually only a few thousand species are covered by the headline of illegal wildlife trade. The other up to I think 8 million wildlife species are not covered by the illegal wildlife trade heading, which means that animals such as the horseshoe bat, which is understood to be linked with COVID, are not covered by the illegal wildlife trade and can be legally traded across the world. So I think when you look at the legal wildlife trade today, it makes up a vast bulk of the trade in animals that we do see across the world, and it makes up the biggest reservoir of animals and potential for infectious diseases being spread across the world as well. I think we cannot just look, I think, as the EU does right now, against the illegal wildlife trade, but we must look at where the vast majority of the trade actually happens, which happens legally. Anja, do you have any comments on this question?
Yes, I agree with you that it's not only the illegal trade. The legal trade in animals is even bigger than the illegal trade in wildlife, and the numbers are immense. The numbers of animals caught from the wild and traded all over the world. I think these animals pose a real risk, because for the animals that are infected with unknown viruses, and most of animals have in the wild have unknown viruses. I thought experts told us that around 600,000 to 800,000 unknown infectious diseases lurk in wildlife, in wild animals, and it doesn't matter if they are endangered species, if they are protected or not. We should leave them alone, let them be, save their habitats, make sure that they can live the life they want to live without interference from humans. And that is not only better for the animals, but in the end, it's also better for humans.
Thank you, Anja. I have a question from Femke van der Houw, who asks, how can we as animal lovers do even more for animals? And how can we help the European Parliament to end animal cruelty? I think, Anja, you're the best person to answer this question.
Well, that's quite a big question. How can we end animal cruelty? I think by not giving up. Keep fighting for animals. They deserve that we continue with our struggle for them. We cannot look the other way. And it is often very frustrating. It is frustrating to see that processes, especially in the European Union, take so long. For even a small change in animal welfare, it takes often years and years, sometimes even decades. So we should keep fighting for them and keep asking your representatives in the national parliaments, in the European Parliament, to fight for animals as well. Because in the end, the thing that we need to make big changes is majorities. We need a majority in the European Parliament to get legislation adopted, to get resolutions adopted, amendments, motions. We do a lot of work and keep fighting, but we need support from citizens, we need support from NGOs, and in the end, we need a clear majority in the European Parliament to convince the European Commission and the member states that something needs to change.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And Anja, you're one of the biggest fighters for animals that there is in the Parliament, but you need support. And I think we all need to ask our politicians about where did COVID come from? Because that's a question that I think has been forgotten in so much of the reaction to the pandemic. There has been almost an amnesia or a political decision not to talk about the source of the pandemic, and this has meant that issues to do with wildlife have not been as prominent as they were even a couple of months ago. We are hoping that through the G20, this issue won't be dropped. And that we will start looking at this issue again, and we do detect some political movement towards that, but we cannot let politicians forget that we need to prevent future pandemics. A pandemic that has cost millions of lives and has cost trillions, tens of trillions to the global economy. We can't just let this happen again. I have another question from Martin Volgazan, who asks, what can the EU do for animals during the G20? Well, I can answer that because the EU can do a lot. The G20 is a platform of discussion for global leaders. It comes together at least once a year. And it brings together the global leaders from the 20 biggest industrialized countries, and it includes a lot of the countries that have that either are importers or exporters of wildlife and wild animal products. The EU has been a leader in pushing wildlife and wildlife protection through the G20. And even a couple of months ago, a coalition of European countries pushed for an investigation on wildlife trade that would be done with a number of international organizations. sadly, because of a veto from the United States due to a separate issue around climate change, that did not, there was no final agreement during that meeting. So we're looking towards this final meeting of the G20 leaders this weekend to put into words the commitments that the leaders have taken to at least start investigating the sources of the COVID-19 outbreak, and to put in place an investigation regarding what can be done to put restrictions on the trade in wildlife and wild animal products. We hope that European leaders will continue to do that this weekend and will continue to push this on the agenda. But we're also aware that we have to look towards next year's G20 summit, which will be chaired by Italy. And we very much hope that Italy will be a supporter of more restrictions on the wildlife trade, and will push for this to be on the agenda of their presidency, including at the Leaders Summit in the autumn of 2021. There is another question from Elroy Stan. How can we as citizens make the biggest change in the European Parliament? A little bit similar to the question before, but I think, as you said, Anja, we need politicians to be aware and to raise this issue, especially about the link to wildlife of the current pandemic.
Yes, and I think it starts, of course, with the elections. When there are European elections, make sure that you vote for people who are willing to make an effort, who want to make real changes and look at the causes of pandemics like COVID, and not only looking at how to go back to business as usual as fast as possible. And keep the pressure, send emails, start petitions, start citizens' initiatives. It is really important that you keep the pressure high. You know, if politicians are really, in general, they are really sensitive to public pressure. So if there's something in the newspaper, they are more willing to look at an issue than when there's nobody interested, nobody sending emails, no NGO working on the topic. Then politicians look often the other way. When there is more pressure, when they see that citizens are really concerned with animal welfare, when they are really concerned with wildlife trade, with factory farming, then they are more willing to do to step up their efforts. So keep fighting. That's I think that's the best thing you can do as a citizen to influence the European Parliament through voting and through public campaigns.
Thank you very much, Anja. And for sure, we will keep all of you watching, updated about the progress of the petition and the next steps, including this weekend at the Leaders Summit. We will continue to fight with our allies, such as Anja and others in Europe and national governments around the European Union, in order to make sure that we end this cruel trade forever. So thank you again, Anja, for your presence and your time, and we hope to have some success in the next days and weeks.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was a huge pleasure. Thank you that I was allowed to accept the 1 million signatures you collected, and let's keep our fingers crossed for this weekend for the G20 summit.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right.